The Zephyrus G14 from Asus has been pretty much the best small gaming laptop for about 2 years now. But now Acer has entered the ring as well, with their Triton 14. And it's clear from the outside that they're aiming directly at the Zephyrus. So can the Zephyrus stay on top, or will the Triton 14 dethrone the king? Well, let's find out. And please like and subscribe if you like these type of videos. From the outside, they're both going for a slightly stealthy look, but with a little gaming twist. They've both got a full aluminum body from top to bottom, so both of them are incredibly sturdy, especially for a gaming laptop. But the Zephyrus bends a little less when you press on it. It's not a huge difference, but you can see it. They're about the same thickness, but the Triton is more sloped than the Zephyrus, so it's thicker at its thickest point and thinner at its thinnest point. But these two are basically the lightest gaming laptops you can get, with the Zephyrus being the absolute lightest. But damn, are they both ever portable. You can easily use both of them with one hand. But when it comes to what's on the inside, the Zephyrus definitely has a step over the Triton. It simply has a lot more power stacked into that little body. The Triton has a very low power Intel chip, which is normally used on light notebooks, while the Zephyrus has a real gaming laptop CPU. And while their GPU power limits might seem close, the Triton is actually severely power limited, which we'll get to in a second. And not to mention, the Zephyrus simply has higher configuration options. It can be spec'd all the way up to an RTX 5080. Now you might think stacking a 5070 against a 5070 Ti laptop is a bit unfair, but it's not. This higher spec Zephyrus is actually cheaper than this 5070 Triton. And this difference will be apparent once we get to performance. They both do actually have an almost identical port selection, which was already great to begin with, including that micro SD card reader. But the big difference here lies in their power bricks. On first glance, the Zephyrus just has a bigger power brick, right? Which isn't very nice. But while the Zephyrus uses this proprietary Asus connector, the Triton actually charges through USB-C. Now you might think, that's awesome, everything should charge with USB-C. But in this case, it's not so awesome. This iteration of USB-C currently heavily limits the amount of power the laptop can get. And less power means less performance. And again, this will be visible in games. And USB-C charging also means that one USB-C port is always occupied, but that's not a huge issue. But funny enough, the Zephyrus also just supports USB-C charging, so it kind of has the best of both worlds. But then we move on to their keyboards. And in my opinion, the Triton is the clear winner here, at least in terms of looks. The Zephyrus does have an RGB backlight, but with only one lighting zone, while the Triton has full per-key RGB, so it has the option for some way cooler effects. As for the keys themselves, they have very similar feeling and sounding keys, which means they're both great. The Zephyrus does have the advantage of having 4 macro keys at the top here, but this glass slab on the Triton is very comfortable to rest your hands on. It's nice and smooth. There is a huge difference in their trackpads though. The Zephyrus has a classic diving board trackpad. It's made of glass and is very high quality. Definitely one of the best ones you can get on a laptop. But the Triton just has this single glass slab in the bottom here with these 2 light up LEDs when you press it. Well, that is because it has a haptic vibrating touchpad. This thing has no moving parts at all, and it just simulates the feeling of a click when you press on it. And the difference is pretty obvious. I myself do prefer haptic touchpads. They're very satisfying to use and you can press down anywhere you want. On a diving board trackpad, this top part cannot be clicked down, so it's basically unusable anyways. But the trackpad on the Zephyrus is still more consistent. When you're using 2 fingers, the Triton's touchpad can miss inputs, and sometimes you just have to press a little harder. while the Zephyrus' trackpad is mechanical, so it just always clicks, and it's not limited by its software. But I still think a haptic touchpad wins here. I really like this thing. Oh, and the Triton 14 also comes with a pen, but you can only use it on the trackpad, not on the display. This is pretty cool for artists. It's basically a built-in Wacom tablet. But for most people, this is just something they're never gonna use. Now, when we get to their displays, you might get déjà vu, because they have essentially the exact same screens, except the Triton has a touchscreen. Some people never use this, but for the people that do, this is a pretty big deal. However, this touch layer does add these weird dots all over the display, which you do see when you sit closer to the screen. And to me, this is pretty distracting, so I prefer the Zephyrus. Other than that, these two are both gorgeous. At 3K 120Hz with an OLED panel, they are pretty much the prettiest screens you can buy on a laptop. 120Hz is also plenty for fast-paced games in my opinion, and 500 nits is more than bright enough for even outside use. But the Zephyrus does have a very big advantage over the Triton, its anti-reflective layer. If you use your laptop near a window, a light, or even outside a lot, the Zephyrus is leagues more usable than the Triton. It really is a night and day difference. So again, I think the Zephyrus wins here in my opinion. I'm pretty sure they use the same hinges as well, since they both have the same amount of display wobble. But the Triton is a bit poopy to open with one hand, since it picks up the laptop a lot if you press on it too hard. Speaking of opening them with one hand, the Zephyrus has no issues here, since it has a little lip on the side to grab onto. But the Triton has nothing, so trying to smoothly open it with one hand is basically impossible, unless you have long nails. Okay, now for my favorite part, their speakers. I don't have to say anything, right? The Triton apparently has this really elaborate speaker setup that you can tune with extra third-party software and blah blah blah. It just sounds bad. I've tried everything. The Zephyrus has two very good top-firing speakers here, as well as dedicated subwoofers on the bottom. So it has better clarity, more bass, higher volume. Yeah, you get it. It just sounds a lot better. It looks like the Triton has a better webcam, but I'm pretty sure they're the exact same, with just different, more aggressive post-processing. But the Zephyrus definitely has a better microphone. It sounds pretty damn good. Alright, finally, the most important part, performance. The Triton 14 has some really tight power limits, so how much faster is the Zephyrus going to be? Well, in Cinebench R23, we see that its CPU is a bit faster in single-core performance, but a lot faster multi-core wise. Like, almost 3 times as fast, which is a pretty big deal for productivity apps. And in 3D Mark TimeSpy, it shouldn't be a surprise that an RTX 5070 Ti handily beats a 5070, by quite a bit as well. But benchmarks don't tell the entire story, so let's play some actual games and see how they compare.
You'll never take me down.
What did you do, man? No!
I don't think I have to tell you that the Zephyrus is a lot faster than the Triton. The tight power limits on the Acer simply means there's not a whole lot of watts to go around for the CPU and GPU. And the fact that the Triton is limited to a 5070 with that little power and only 8GB of VRAM isn't helping this situation either. Its CPU is also a couple generations of performance behind in terms of its multi-core speed, which is pretty important for productivity workloads. So in every conceivable way, the Zephyrus is simply a lot faster, be it for gaming, productivity, or even simple workloads. In fact, even the 5070 model of the Zephyrus G14 will be faster than this Triton 14, because that one also has higher power limits and a faster CPU. I mean, hell, the 5060 G14 will probably outperform this Triton 14 because it's so power limited. But less power usage does mean less heat. So does the Triton 14 stay cooler? Well, yes, and by quite a bit. Both its CPU and GPU never got even close to 80 degrees, which is very nice. The Zephyrus does get a bit warmer, but also nowhere near its thermal limit. These temperatures are perfectly fine for a laptop. But this isn't really impressive in comparison. I mean, it's like saying, oh, my Peugeot 107 stays cooler than my Audi R8. Well yeah, one is a sports car, while the other one is a glorified lawnmower. A very good lawnmower though. As for fan noise, the Triton does stay pretty quiet in its performance mode. But I tested their performance in their turbo modes, which make about the same amount of noise for both of them. But what about their battery life? The Triton has a very low power chip, so does it outperform the Zephyrus here? Well, I tested them in two scenarios, under light use and during gaming. In the light use case, I played a YouTube video until they both died, with their displays at full brightness at 60 Hz and with their dedicated GPUs turned off. And the Zephyrus lasts quite a bit longer. It seems that modern AMD laptop chips are still more efficient than even the most low-power Intel chips this year. Look, I'm not a fanboy of either Intel or AMD, but this has been a recurring theme for the last 2 years. Now, in the gaming tests, I played Battlefield 1 until they both died, with the same settings as before. And like always, my advice is to buy a Steam Deck if you want to play games on battery. Gaming laptops are just not made for that. Alright, since both of these are thin and light laptops, they don't have a lot of space for upgradeability. They both do have a Wi-Fi card slot, which could be handy in the future, but they both also only have one M.2 SSD slot, so you'll need to reinstall Windows or clone the old drive if you want more storage. And they both also lack upgradable RAM, so you better buy a high memory model. Now for the most important part. Which one of them is cheaper? It's the Zephyrus, for now. The Zephyrus with an RTX 5070 Ti and 32GB of RAM is currently around $2,600, which is quite a bit cheaper than when it first launched. But the Triton 14 only just launched, so it's quite a bit more expensive at around $3,000. When you look at this now, there's an obvious choice here, right? And if we compare them spec to spec, so both of them with an RTX 5070, the Zephyrus is a laptop tier cheaper than the Triton 14. Which finally brings us to our conclusion. Which one of these should you get? The Zephyrus G14 or the Triton 14? If you've seen the entire video, I think it should be obvious that the Zephyrus is the clear winner here. There is nothing the Triton 14 does better than the Zephyrus that warrants this much of a price hike. The Zephyrus is a lot faster, and it's not even close. It has a better display, speakers that are like 5 generations ahead, and all of that at the same size, in a lighter body, with longer battery life. The Triton has a touchscreen, I guess? Oh, and that haptic touchpad is really cool, I have to admit. But all of that at a cheaper price, and the Zephyrus wins every day of the week. Yes, the Triton will get cheaper in the coming months. But even if it's 100, 200, or even $300 cheaper than the Zephyrus is still just a lot better across the board.
It's also very loud.
The Triton might be cool for artists because of that pen and the touchscreen, but buying a worse laptop just for that is a bit too much in my opinion. I would just buy the Zephyrus and a separate tablet from the money you're saving on it. But do not get me wrong, the Triton 14 is not a bad laptop. Acer has done a really good job here. But as long as the Zephyrus exists, there's just no reason to buy this thing. Now let me give a huge shout out to my YouTube members. Soundwife, Thomas, Inky, Mr. Frosty Dude, Dropzone1, Martijn Snijkers, Flimsy, Aki, Disco Volante, Daniel, Mr. Nuke, Sebastian, Christian Sands, Real Elf, Toasted, Eric the Rad, Walter, Wesley Rhodes, Michael, Ghost Data, and Ano Gedar. If you become a YouTube member, you get early access to content of mine, a shout out at the end of every video, and you'll also be supporting me as a creator to make these videos. And of course, you'll also be part of the Cool Guys Club, so you can use cool emojis like these in the comment section. So join the club if you're interested. And I will see you all in the next video. Bye bye.
Ooh, a nice village. Hey, you know what? You can never go wrong with a good village, bro. You could get like a blacksmith and whatnot. Oh, wow.